The Daily Derech. We are walking the path of holiness.
Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the Rabbinical Assembly. Today is the fourth day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 14th of Nisan. We've been talking about this day for so long, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. We will read a special Torah reading for Hilchot Pesach this coming Shabbat, and guess what? It's Pesach tonight. It's Pesach tonight. Let's begin. We'll start with Mayam Loez on the Parashah that will eventually come up. Not this Shabbat, because it's Hilchot Pesach, but the one after that will be Parashat Shemini. So we began discussing it yesterday, or in the last day of the podcast, and now we're going to continue talking about this Parsha in a new way today. So what are we talking about? Well, we're going to continue talking about the idea of the eighth day. We talked about it one day last podcast, but today we're going to talk about it differently. According to Tractate Shabbat, this eighth day was really special. The beginning of the Parsha begins B'yom HaShmini on the eighth day, and this was the eighth day after the Miluim, eighth day after the priests, the sons of Aaron and Moses, practiced setting up and putting down the altar, practicing all the sacrifices. Today was going to be the day on the eighth day that the Tabernacle was finally going to be inaugurated, and so this is what we mean by literally the eighth day. But according to the Gemara, according to Masechet Shabbat, and according to also the Halachic Midrash as well, there is 10 crowns. There are 10 things that make this day so special, which is why it's called B'yom HaShmini, on the eighth day. Not just the eighth day in general of what they were doing, but on the eighth day. Why the eighth day? And specifically 10 crowns, or 10 beautiful things or momentous about this particular day. And I think this really helps us to understand why this day in the history of the Jewish people is so very important. And then, of course, Nadav and Avihu burning after this, and this horrible thing that happens to Aaron's two sons afterwards is so much more dramatic once you understand how beautiful this day was supposed to be. And honestly, how beautiful the day still is. Which is what's interesting about it. It's such a bittersweet day. So what are these 10 crowns? Well, number one, it was the first day of creation. What do we mean by that? Well, the day was Sunday. It was the first day of the week, which is therefore the first day that creation began. So it has that crown. It's the beginning of creation. So in some ways, it's like the beginning of a new creation. Number two, it was the first day of the princes. What does this mean? Well, we know that in the inauguration of the tabernacle, as is narrated in the book of Numbers, in Parshat Naso, the chieftains, or the tribal chieftains, the tribal heads of each tribe, would bring a sacrifice in the inauguration of the tabernacle, and this began on that day. In each day, another chieftain would bring a sacrifice. So that began this day, the inauguration of the altar, really by the leaders of the people, the lay leaders of the people. Number three, it was the first day for the priesthood. Okay, this is actually when Aaron and his children began to serve as priests. Before that, anyone who offered a sacrifice would offer a sacrifice, except they just needed to be a firstborn child, right? The firstborn child would offer the sacrifice for the family. You can offer the sacrifice anywhere. We're going to talk about that more in a second. But anybody could do it. Any firstborn son could do it. But now only Aaron and the priests could do it, which is interesting. It's a crown. It's a beautiful thing, and actually in its restriction of who can do it, and making Aaron and the children and his children so special. Number four, it was the first day for divine service, right? It was the first day the Jewish people were going to bring communal offerings, such as the Tamid offering that they're going to do for the rest of time that we've been talking about, these burnt offerings, that this is the first communal offering that was brought as a community, not just as an individual offering that was offered by a particular person at a particular time, but on behalf of the whole entire community at the tabernacle. So very big. Number five, it was the first day for the descent of fire. Okay, what does this mean? Well, usually you think of lighting a sacrifice by lighting fire by a pre-existing fire. And that's honestly the way it usually was done. But the question, where did this fire originally come from? Is it just lit from a flame or something, or you make a spark or something? Well, at least on this day, the fire came from heaven. It came down supposedly like a roaring lion, the Midrash says, of fire that lit the altar, and that was actually the first fire on the altar. And actually, all the fire we get, since the light is eternal, should technically, or ideally at least, be from this original fire that was sent down by God. So that must have been pretty cool, and that's just awesome in general. Who doesn't like lion fires? Number 6, this was the first day when Israelites were commanded not to eat sacred offerings anywhere they wanted, but only within the boundaries of the tabernacle's enclosure, right? If you made a sacrifice before outside of this space, you can actually do that anywhere. And so you can also eat the sacrifice also anywhere as well. Now you can only eat inside of the tabernacle enclosure. Number 7, it was the first day for the resting of the divine presence, right? We know that the tabernacle and the sacrifices and the service that happened in there enabled the divine presence of God to dwell in that place, and this was the first day of that. It was the first day for blessing Israel, right? It's the first day the Kohanim offered their famous priestly blessing to the people. Number 9, it was the first day for the prohibition of private altars. Before, as I said before, you can offer this anywhere. You can offer sacrifices anywhere privately, but now only offerings could be offered inside the tabernacle uniquely, so it really made this space very unique. And lastly, number 10, it was the first of the month. It was the first of Nisan when this happened, of the 8th day, which is a really special day because we know Nisan is supposed to be the first month of the year. So Rosh Chodesh Nisan, very important, and this is all the things that make this special 8th day so special. Let's now turn to the Rambam on the laws of Pesach, the laws of chametz matzah. We're going to be eating a lot of that very soon, but guess what? Not today, not this particular day, and we're going to learn why in just a second. According to we're going to actually be on the 11th halacha today of the 6th chapter. We're going to talk about a specific rabbinic ordinance that is very important. We talked a little bit about tasting, that we have to at least eat the matzah, we have to digest it, we sort of have to taste it in some way, maybe not like taste the taste, but at least chew it and something like that, right? We can't just swallow it. But there's something else. The rabbis add actually an extra understanding here, an extra law that we need to follow, and that specifically after we eat matzah, we shouldn't eat anything else. And this is why, actually, traditionally, the afikomen now is matzah. And there's a very complicated history of what the afikomen is and everything like that. But now we have the dessert of matzah, even though it's not the most favorite dessert of everyone, and that's an understatement. The reason why is because of this rabbinic ordinance, is because the last thing that's supposed to be on our taste, and the last thing that we're supposed to taste, is the matzah. And so we're supposed to kind of sit with that matzah taste afterwards, and that actually is an ordinance of the sages, so we can really kind of absorb the matzah and absorb that taste, which is going to be very, very important. So just make sure, even right before you leave your Seder, last thing you do, have a little bit of matzah before you at least. And of course, you know how much matzah is that going to be according to the Rambam? What do you think, everybody? You got it. A kazayit, at least an olive's worth of that matzah. It counts to fulfill this divrei sofrim here, to fulfill this rabbinic ordinance. It's also important now. What I talked about, the 14th of Nisan, which today is a little difficult because, as I said, there's sort of a process going to be in the morning of first, right? First we can't eat matzah starting, and we can't eat chametz starting at the 10 o'clock hour. Now, this is not going to be this is going to be very much based on where you are, but that hour of the day, you have to look it up where you are. And then 11 o'clock, right, now we can't benefit from matzah anymore, from chametz anymore. And finally, on at noon, right, everything is forbidden, right? It's completely forbidden according to the Torah. All chametz, benefiting it from anything else, everything has to be done. Bitul chametz has to be done. Everything has to be done. The nullification of chametz has to be done. Now, the hard thing is that now you have very little to eat because it's Pesach, right? In that it's not Pesach yet technically, but you can't eat anything with chametz in it, right? You can't own it, you can't benefit anything like that. And so, if you're gonna eat bread, you would think, okay, well, I'm gonna have matzah then, okay? But actually, it is prohibited to have. The sages also put an ordinance that it's prohibited for a person to eat matzah on Pesach Eve. Why? Because the matzah you should taste the matzah for the first time. It should be sort of fresh in your mouth when you eat it for the first time at the Seder. So it's also forbidden the day of. So always the afternoon of the 14th of Nisan is always so annoying because you can't really eat. You can eat so little, and you kind of don't know what to eat. But put some fruit aside, put something aside, put a little bit of snacks aside that of course doesn't have chametz in it, but is not matzah. So you don't get too hungry before the Seder. But important, you're actually supposed to go into the Seder a little bit hungry, or you're supposed to go hungry, so that when you eat the Pesach meal and you eat the matzah, that you're actually hungry for food in general. And of course, who's not hungry once the food finally comes at the Seder? But it's important that you do that. So don't have a big meal in the afternoon. Don't have a big meal. Be a little bit hungry once you get to the Seder. Very important. Not too hungry, but a little bit hungry. Very important. Let's finally turn to Menorat HaMaor. Continuing on with the theme of Pesach, we're actually starting something a little different. We're going to be talking about the plagues in the Menorat HaMaor and the meaning behind the plagues and what they were kind of supposed to achieve. And this acts as sort of an introductory text to talking about the plagues. That's what we're going to be talking about over the next couple of episodes throughout the rest of Pesach, with the Menorat HaMaor at least. Basically, the idea behind it is this. The real problem that Pharaoh did, besides like hurting the Jewish people and oppressing them and doing all the terrible things he did as a tyrant, the real problematic line that Pharaoh said that God seems to remember, according to the sages, is Mi Hashem asher eshma b'kolo. He says at one point, who is God? Who is this Hashem? Who's this good K-Vav-K guy that I should listen to his voice? And at least the way the sages interpret is that Pharaoh thinks he is more powerful than whoever this God is who he hasn't really heard of. And Pharaoh actually thinks of himself as divine. And we know this, that the pharaohs thought of themselves as a god. And Pharaoh said, I'm more powerful than God. I don't worry about this God. And so therefore, I'm not going to worry about him too much. And of course, this is really, of course, what sets God off, right? And we actually understand that it's God and God's self that punishes Pharaoh instead of through an intermediary or something else like that, because of the personal insult to God's kavod and God's honor and God's power. Because that's going to be so important, is that the whole idea behind the plagues and the Pesach narrative is that God is the one in charge. It might seem like other things are in charge. You might think that there are other people that are important or powerful people in the world, but in the end, or there might be gods in certain regions that are more powerful than others or something like that. All the kinds of things that people believed. But actually, God is really the one truly behind everything. God is the one who has control over everything, both the things that you can see and even the things that you can't see. And so that's what needed to be taught to Pharaoh and the Egyptian people, and specifically to Pharaoh because of his insult and the fact that he didn't understand God's true power. I think this is important for us, especially as we walk into Pesach together, that the essence of this holiday, the essence of what we're supposed to walk out with, is that God is truly in charge. Right? That all these things that we think we are subservient to are an illusion, that in the end, God is in control of them, that God is in control of everything. And so our prime allegiance always should be to Hashem and Hashem's will, and not necessarily the things that we fear that we see in front of us. And of course, that's what Pharaoh and Egyptians, and of course the Jews throughout all times, and actually the whole entire world, would be taught through the plagues, as we're going to talk about in the next couple of episodes. But if you don't walk out of Pesach with that, you're not doing it right? You walk out of Pesach with this idea that God is really, truly in control, and that everything else that we think we are subservient to or somehow is in control or powerful over us really is an illusion, and we need to have our freedom, proclaim our freedom, and reconnect to God. I hope you have a wonderful Pesach, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful Seder. I hope it's meaningful. I hope that the Daily Derech has been contributing to your meaning of your Pesach, and hopefully it makes your Sederim more meaningful and your holiday. I'll be with you through all of the Pesach holiday. Of course, not on the Yemei Tov. You won't hear me come out with podcasts similar to Shabbat, but on Chol HaMoed, there'll be new episodes, and we'll continue to talk about Passover. Enjoy the night, everybody. Enjoy. Chag Sameach to you. Chag Sameach. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions, and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.